Hi, I'm Larry King, and you're watching Coping with COVID, a special series brought to you by PositiveVoices.com and the International Positive Psychology Association. Our co-host is Dr. James Pawelski, professor of practice at the University of Pennsylvania Positive Psychology Center and founding executive director of the International Positive Psychology Association. James, tell us about today's guests.
Well, Larry, first of all, it's great to see you. It's great to be doing these interviews with you. I'm really excited about today's guest. Dr. John Ratey is the world's foremost authority on the brain fitness connection. He's an associate clinical professor of psychiatry at Harvard Medical School, and he's an internationally recognized expert in neuropsychiatry. He's written 11 books, including Go Wild, which explores how we can achieve optimal physical and mental health by getting in touch with our caveman roots.
We welcome Dr. John Ratey to our program. We'll start with this question, John. Newspapers around the country are reporting increased calls to suicide hotlines. Does that surprise you? And what do people need to do to protect their mental health during this crisis?
No, it doesn't surprise me at all, Larry, and it's good to be with you again. But I think one of the things we know is that there's going to be an increase anxiety, stress, and depression with this confinement that we're all in and the fear and trembling that we all have about this virus. So the best way to deal with this, many things we can do, but to make ourselves as healthy as possible. And one of the big conduits to health is exercise and keeping up exercise, even though we're recommended that we shelter in place and stay in. We can certainly go out for walks and jogs and the like, but we should learn to exercise within the confines of our domicile. So many avenues to have that happen.
So you recommend doing a lot of exercise when you're sequestered like this?
I recommend it, and I'm doing that. We have all kinds of helpful aids, YouTubes, online courses, online activities. We do 3 times a week. My wife and I do a Zumba with someone from Bali who leads us with people all over the world, and it's so much fun and it gets us moving and keeps us moving. But there's all kinds of opportunities, yoga, other kinds of fitness procedures.
So John, you've written about how exercise actually changes the neurochemistry of the brain. Can you say something about that?
Sure. A bout of exercise is like taking a little bit of Prozac and a little bit of Ritalin, because it does the same thing. It increases our serotonin, our dopamine, our norepinephrine, all those neurotransmitters that are responsible for helping our moods get and stay better, as well as elevating our endorphins, which a lot of people know about, and endocannabinoids, which is our own marijuana factors. And we get those elevated with moving our bodies, and it goes up to our brain as well. And all grouped together makes our mood much more resilient, much happier, and improves our motivation, as well as our wish to connect one to another, which is really the big news, and it's such an important thing to do in these times, is to maintain our connections with one another.
How about, what do you suggest for older people who don't have the ability to run or lift weights or exercise vigorously?
Well, they don't have to exercise vigorously, Larry. They just have to move. And so something like this Zumba Gold, for instance, and using certain exercises that are designed to just get you moving around and not sitting all the time. This is a problem with our lives in general, our sedentary lives, but certainly now we're we have the option of watching Netflix until we become a piece of furniture again, and we need to move our bones and move our body and moves our muscles. There was just an article out this morning from the University of Virginia, where they showed that if the more that we move, the more antioxidant we make, and a special new one that they're finding that has to do with helping prevent the bad stuff happening from COVID, that helps us avoid some of the respiratory problems, lung problems that we have by exercising. So it's really exciting stuff, and we'll hear much more about it in the future, but that just showed up this morning.
Well, what amazing news these days when we really can use some good news. So exercise changes the brain. It can perhaps help us to protect us against some of the complications with COVID-19. What do you say to people who may, even in spite of that, find that they lack the motivation or feel like they lack the time to exercise properly, John?
Well, one of the things about in today's world that we're all living in, the time seems to be abundant for most people. So, and the big problem is well, how do you get started and how do you stay on it? And the best advice I have is to do it with a time and day certain. In other words, say when I get up, I'm gonna, after breakfast or even before, I'm going to do about, like you were mentioning, you were doing the 7-minute exercise. You do one of those for 7 minutes to get your muscles moving, and it doesn't have to be perfect. It just is, as you start, you're going to not do the exercises correctly, but close to it, and then eventually you'll get into it. So not be hard on yourself about being absolutely, 100% doing it correctly. And, but you get moving and you stay moving. And this has so many benefits.
You wrote a book called Go Wild. What actually does that mean?
Well, Go Wild was about going back to our roots, to our hunter-gatherer roots, and basically to show that we have our genes are hunter-gatherer genes, and hunter-gatherers were always moving, and they were always using their bodies, and we need to recover that. We need to go back to that time, because we're made to move, and we need to move, and that's why we get this tremendous benefit in our brains, because when we move, we have what we call reciprocal innervation to our brains. So as we move on our muscles, we're directed by our brains, but we're turning our brains on as well.
So John, when our ancestors were going wild back in their day, they didn't have screens. And these days, it seems like even more in these times, our lives are orbiting around these screens. Do you have any thoughts about how we can make sure that we're balancing the time with exercise and screen time?
Well, no, but and that's where you co-opt the screens. You use the screens to help you exercise, to guide you, to follow the leader, whoever that might be. We do a yoga once a week, a yoga thing for 30 minutes with the gal who leads us in the yoga poses. So you can use the screens, but and also one of the things that I like about the screens is just joining up with people and making sure you do that with family and friends, and not forget that this is one way to connect. And with our technology, with Zooming, with Skyping, with all the Google Hangouts, I mean, you have more of an opportunity to feel the presence and be present with others when you're Zooming together.
Doctor, how about sleep? People have a lot of time to sleep now. Are there benefits to that?
Yes, there are big benefits to that, and if they can remain asleep and stay asleep longer, they'll dream more, because our dreams tend to come at the end of the night. And the dreams help us work through some of the fears and realities that we're dealing with. And it helps to, in many cases, to realign ourselves so that we're better able to deal with the changes in our world.
So think about kind of the other side of it during the day. You've written about how important play is, John, and many of us may be finding that it's a little harder to connect into that playful side of ourselves. Why is play so important, and perhaps especially these days?
Well, because it's such a spontaneous way to, in most cases, to move. And that doesn't mean board games, but other kinds of things with your kids, especially if you're stuck at home with them, is to play with them. One of the great recommendations I have is it's a team that I work with called Go Noodle. This is a free bunch of videos that is very popular amongst elementary school kids, whereas during the pre-COVID, there were 8 million kids a year doing it. So people know about it and families know about it, and it's still available for the kids to be moving, and the adults, because it's really dancing and moving around with a very scripted kind of program.
One of the things a lot of us are missing now, though, is spending time in nature. What do you think the role of nature is, and what can we do now that we can't have it?
We can't have it, but we can if you can get outside just a little bit to get the benefits of the sunshine and the air upon us. So that's why one of the things that, even with the confined to the homes, they're saying that you can get out there and walk and be outside, and that's important, because nature has big benefits for the brain and big benefits for our bodies and our psychology. We feel so much more connected. We have this need to have nature, and most of us in our lives, even before COVID, but certainly now, we have a nature deficit disorder. We need to take in nature where we can. So if you could be outside walking and see the beauties of nature, then it's such a great benefit.
John, you've talked a couple of times about connection and the importance of connection. And I know that thinking about community, connections between a relationship between community and well-being is something that you've thought a lot about. Can you tell us a little bit about why community is so important, and a couple of other thoughts about how we can connect, even though we can't, do it in ways that we're used to?
Yeah, no, we're part of the human community, and when we connect with one another, we change our chemistry, basically, in our bodies and our brains. They're all growth promoting changes that happen when we're connecting one to another. I mean, all kinds of studies now have shown that when we're more connected, when we're more social, we're more resilient. Our body is better at fighting off disease and better at dealing with invaders like the corona. So the more we're connected, the better we're going to be, and the healthier we're going to be. Not only is it more fun and feels better, but it helps us feel that empathy towards others, and we need that. We feel better with that. We feel better.
What's the most misunderstood aspect, Doctor, of brain health?
The most misunderstood is that your body plays a big role in your brain health. It's not just about doing crossword puzzles or figuring out the solutions to problems. It's about using your body as in the movement space to get into nature, to pay attention to the sleep you need, to the nutrients you take in. You have to really see yourself as being connected from your body to your brain.
Can you give us a final tip on how we can optimize brain health during this lockdown?
Yeah, I think the big ones are to get enough sleep, eat right. The data show that, for instance, doing the Middle Eastern diet is a really good way of getting yourself ready to deal with the virus. Certainly exercising, as I say, and trying to get to nature if you can, but also really focus on getting connected and remaining connected. So one of the ways of doing all this is to set a time and day certain. In other words, don't leave it to chance. Don't say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to exercise on Tuesday, but Tuesday at what time that you're going to set that time, because we're so unstructured in this environment, and we need to bring some structure into it so we can achieve these goals that we need, that we have to really pay attention to and deal with.
John, thanks for being a great guest. I really appreciate it. Jim and I will be back with some thoughts. Welcome back to our Coping with COVID special. We just interviewed Dr. John Ratey, the world's foremost authority on the brain fitness connection. What do you think our viewers will take away from this, Jim?
So Larry, I think this has been such an important discussion, in part because he emphasized the connections between exercise and neurochemistry that actually changes our brains and our health, and can actually be protective against some of the complications of COVID-19. It reminds me, Larry, when I was in college, sometimes I would feel down, had these thoughts that were not helpful to me, but I wound up creating this little mantra that worked for me. And I asked myself, okay, have I eaten today? Have I slept? Have I exercised? And if the answer to any of those questions was no, then I was like, well, then I can't think that negative thought. Like, I've got to take care of myself. And if I do, and I still want to, be down, that's okay. But it's important to understand that there's this interplay between our bodies and how we take care of our bodies, and our minds and how we think. So I think it's really important to underscore the importance of exercise, sleep, nutrition, play. And I'll just end with one final thing. He kept emphasizing the importance of have time and certainty with exercise. Yeah. Start small, start with something that you enjoy, start with something you can do, and put it in your calendar. Make sure you do it.
Unfortunately, I'm 0 for 3 a lot. Thanks, Jim. See you next time.
Great talking with you, Larry.